People ask me why I'm still so driven and so calm in the face of drama. Most people think, you probably should have necked yourself when you went through it all, losing money, media, court cases. When things are bad, they're not as bad as what they could be. You're not in as bad a situation where you're having to hide because your father's chasing you with a shotgun.
End of year 10, I had a heap of fuel drums and we built this raft that we were going to paddle to school. Nobody catered for the wind back then. You just thought you could do it.
Or the tides, or the fact that it didn't float very well or fast.
I still don't know where it ended up.
We left it at school. Just outside school. I was adopted at birth, so my biological father was killed in a car accident a couple of weeks after I was actually conceived. And then my biological mother was from a religious family, and she was forced into adopting me out.
I think the common ground we had was that we both sat up the back of the class.
And our fathers weren't overly enthusiastic about school.
Oh no.
We had just have competitions. Michael ended up winning because he'd had, I think it was 150 days off. I only got to 120 days off because our fathers didn't really think we needed to go to school. My father was sort of a Jekyll and Hyde, he was great. Some days we'd be going out, he'd be buying motorbikes for me and teaching me how to ride motorbikes. And then other days, I'd get a building most people wouldn't believe.
Once school finished and you walked out that gate on the last day of school, the party was over. You're there one day, the next day you're at work.
I came from Newcastle. I started with nothing. I went through the Newcastle earthquake. My truck driver was killed under the Kent Hotel in Hamilton. I came up to Queensland, I had about $5,000 cash in my pocket. I'd lost everything.
The next thing I heard, Chris has got married and everybody's flown to the US in the private jet.
Then I built it up to the stage where we're dealing with the major developers, Villa World, Sunland, Meriton, all the majors. We built and designed all the systems which built the largest investment property selling organisation in the country, selling 200 investment properties, doing about 400 to 500 refinance or mortgages per month. We sold properties like these in Arundel for about $150,000 to $180,000. Now they're $500,000 plus. They've more than doubled, about 250% increase, which is better than basically any superannuation return over that period of time. You as real estate agents were trying to sell what you had and say, here, this is a fantastic property, you should buy it.
What we had.
Yeah, it suits you, it suits everybody. It was the perfect property for everybody.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Whereas what we would do is we would say every property, every purchaser needs a different property.
Yes.
So let's try and find you the property which suits you. We would tailor the property to suit their needs so that they could save the most amount of tax, cost as little as possible, and be able to then keep the property for long term.
Chris was very effective at getting a job done that no one understood how it was being done.
And we were able to sell those properties more cheaply and more efficiently than the real estate agents could. The developers got to choose. So if you think a developer is going to go to somewhere which is more expensive, then you're mistaken.
No matter how good you build it, if you can't sell it, you've got huge problems.
If we could sell twice as many properties for you, you may have made less per deal, but you're able to do it twice a year and keep the turnover going, which would allow you to make more profit in the long run.
You've just got to get results. If you're borrowing millions, as most developers do.
We got trained in the basics of selling a residential property. No one even considered investment properties. It was just not spoken about.
So how many properties have you developed?
13,000 plus.
Wow. And all of those have been sold by local real estate agents?
No, majority by
people like me.
People like yourself.
I had a staff of 350 people. I had thousands of clients. We had not one of them unhappy. Not one of them. Until the media hit.
I'm sure everybody can relate to somebody like Lindy Chamberlain who had trial by media, and I could just see the same thing happening to Chris. It was just a good story and nobody wanted to know the truth. And when you learn now about the powers that be that was behind it, they had a vested interest in the truth not coming out.
We were accused of two-tier marketing. Now what that means is the locals were going to buy at one price and the property investors were going to buy at another. The way it got to court was they suggested we'd sold a property at 165, which we did. They turned up with a valuation of 135, which made me look bad. The test case against the ACCC hinged on a valuation. They brought in an expert witness, the government, the ACCC. Under cross-examination, they asked him how he'd done his valuation. He said he'd come up here, spent 2 weeks, went to all of the properties, went to the local real estate agents, done his valuation, presented to the court case. The QC, I think for the Commonwealth Bank, who was my co-defendant at the time, then brought out his file and suggested, so there's another valuation here. I think it was for 166,000. He said, can you explain to the court what that was? I said, well, that was the first valuation that I did. I said, first, hang on, so you've done more than one? He said, yes. And then we produced another one, which is a $150,000 valuation. I said to the valuer, why did you drop your valuation from 166 to 150,000? He said, because our federal regulator, the ACCC, told him it was too high and he needed to bring it in lower. If I would have actually manipulated the valuation like that, I would have gone to jail for trying to manipulate the evidence, tried to pervert the course of justice. But because it was our federal regulator doing it, nothing happened. The federal judge, who's now Supreme Court Justice, the highest in the land, came to two interesting conclusions in her summary. She said there was no evidence produced. After 2 years' worth of investigation from the ACCC, there was no evidence produced to show or prove any two-tier marketing. Second of all, her other statement was there was no evidence to show overpriced selling of property. And also mentioning there that she mentioned the newspaper, two-tier marketing, there was no evidence produced. Back in 1998, I was actually spending about $10,000 to $15,000 a week helping people with rents. So I had my people ring them and say, look, you know, I'm sorry, your property, we've settled 100, not your fault. Would you mind if we paid half the rent until they were rented? I even bought properties back where people were terminally ill. And we didn't have to do that because we had a legal obligation, but we had a moral obligation. So I treated that as a cost of doing business so that we looked after our clients. And that was why I knew that not one of our clients was unhappy. But who was unhappy was the real estate agents that were missing out on all those deals. But more importantly, who was unhappy was the media, the newspapers.
I think I've got 4 pages on a couple of times under my own name. I was spending a lot of money at the Gold Coast Bulletin. If you're not spending money in that paper and somebody else is, they're going to give the good press to the person that's spending the money, not the person that's not spending the money.
And we weren't spending any money.
No, you weren't spending any money.
Do you think that had a coincidence with the fact that they were attacking us?
Yeah, but they didn't understand you either. Yeah. No one understood you.
And I was lambasted through the media, had my character assassinated and defamed all the way through from two-tier marketing. I guess they thought they were going to get the business back. If they stopped me, I think they thought they were going to get the business back from the local agents selling the properties.
I think there was a big push by the local agents to the newspapers because they were also losing out.
Yeah. The toughest times in my life have been not from losing money, and I've lost a fortune. To lose money is one thing, but when you lose people. My father disowned me when I was 16 because I wouldn't get my mother to go back to him again, which I'd done once or twice before. The next toughest have been going through a divorce and getting disowned by friends that you think are friends, and then when you got money they're around, and when you got no money they're not around. Those things hurt a lot more than losing money.
My kids hooked me up on Facebook about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and one of the first people I thought, oh, I'll search Chris. It was just great to reconnect because 30 years go by or more, and to still have that same connection with somebody that was exactly the day that you walked out of school, and just reconnect like as if you were seeing each other last week.
The sad part for me is, you know, okay, I lost all my money. I went from probably having a net worth of $100 million, but, you know, I'll rebuild. But the people, the mums and dads, they lost $50,000, $100,000 sometimes. There's probably 1,000 people sold properties and lost money. Well, they could actually run a case, and because the law states that there's a statute of limitations, but the statute of limitations is actually based on when they find out about it. So if they're just hearing this now from me, they're just finding out about it. So it's just a matter of a lawyer getting together a class action, and they could go after whoever told them to sell the property. which is pretty easy to work out.